running
Can you
that
hear me
intro
now?
again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you
There we
now.
go.
But here comes the
There we go.
music again because now we're recording.
Oh, okay. Well, whoa, trippy.
I know.
Well,
Everyone on the podcast has no idea what just happened, except that I'll tell you. We ran the music again.
okay, guys. So
Oh, wait,
I've
they're
seen
saying
some
we have no
comments.
sound. Are you sure?
Oh no, it keeps playing it.
No, we have sound. There's sound.
Okay, can you guys hear us now? Give us a comment. Give us a
Well,
holler if you guys
I'm
can hear
listening
us.
to it live and I
Okay.
can hear it. So if you don't have sound, turn your sound up. Because I can
They
hear it
should
on
be
mine
coming. Hopefully soon here. Okay, well, guys, welcome back to Testing Normal. This is Curtis,
now. This is Jordan.
and this is a podcast where we talk about anything and everything we like to.
Yeah.
And
In fact, we were
this
having a great
beautiful,
conversation right before.
yes, so good. And I want to have that conversation. I think we should have more of that conversation tonight.
Yeah, we can.
Although I know some people are tired of the conversation. We are happy
show,
to
not
kind of.
theirs,
If
right?
you guys also want to kind of help steer these conversations, if you have comments, obviously bring them our way, and we'd love to kind of engage with that as well. Gary, I think you should be getting sound now. I think
you should
I
be.
think sound
But-
should be coming through.
Maybe just close it and reopen it or turn your volume up. Mine was down, just so you know. I thought I had no sound either, and my volume was apparently at 0. So there we go.
Yeah. Well, guys, this week the world has been. It seems like I pay a lot more attention to the world now than probably I did, 10 years ago. But also partially for the podcast, for this episodes, but then also just because I care more in certain things. And as a parent, and Jordan, as a parent himself, we also care about the potential ramifications of laws and care about the ramifications of foreign policies, and how those would influence ourselves and our kids and our country. And so that's why we have opinions, and also just why we think things are correct or not correct. But
Right.
some important things we need to kind of check off the list for today.
Yes.
The Suez Canal, guys. Luckily, that sucker has been opened back up. Sorry, I gotta fix my camera a little bit here.
No, you're
Kinda
good.
Trip. So the Suez Canal has been reopened, which is fantastic. I don't know if anybody, if you did you pay attention to that much, Jordan?
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't. Not a lot of detail. I mean, I saw the picture where it like drew a penis in the ocean.
Like before it went into the canal.
Yeah, which was crazy. If people like no joke, there is a video. I'll put it in our show notes. We had it for last week, but last week just didn't happen for, life. And literally the boat drives around and draws like 3 penis and balls in the ocean. Like it's a weird pattern. So like if you've watched ships in the ocean, they go in a circle. Like that's the most like economical to keep moving if they don't want to drop anchor or whatever. But this ship literally draws male genitalia like 3 times in the ocean and then drives off to go like screw the canal, like
Yeah.
for lack of a better
Basically,
term.
I think they were trying to have fun. If you're waiting on a canal, you're like, hey, we got a GPS system right here. Let's draw something fun, man. Let's have.
But then
I bet.
but then they go get lodged in there
And they get.
yeah, like
It's a butt joke, okay?
yeah,
It's a butt
it was
joke.
it was in poor taste. And there was just a lot of things that were like really coincidental. Like if
Really bad
people
taste.
followed like the QAnon people, which just crazy. Like I talked to some of them when I was in DC and whatnot, and most of them are nice people, but they just kind of believe some strange things like off the bat. And they were kind of like poking fun, or they were saying like what they believed was it was Hillary Clinton trafficking people for sex slavery and whatnot. And the boat call, and there's just weird things that were like, these are the things that's like, this is just strange. Like the call sign for the boat was like H3RC, which was like the call sign for Hillary Rodham Clinton. It was also named a nickname that she had with Secret Service. It was tons of strange things that went on. Who knows what they mean, or if it's just coincidence. I tend to think these days there's not a lot of coincidences left, but the ship drew penises in the ocean and then drove and got stuck in the canal. And it was like mere.
And
did you
now
see it was mere inches from being past regulation to go through there. Like it's the largest ship.
It's the largest
that's ever gone in there.
Largest ship.
I'm gonna say they're probably gonna change some of those regulations after this because it was like
Well,
billions of dollars a day that they
yes.
lost.
billions of dollars lost. But so a couple things. Of course, blame is being shot out left and right to different areas for holding responsibility for it. But one of the craziest things is a group in Egypt that is in the Middle East. They tend to be very not very progressive towards women's rights,
Right.
and they're very kind of super sexist, basically, like very kind of behind in that area, unfortunately. But one of the groups in Egypt was trying to pass the blame on Egypt's first female ship captain. And they were trying to say that it was her fault that the ship got stuck in the canal. But and so they tried to interject it into like Reddit and different social media platforms. And they found out that they were trying to say like she was on this ship and she was the one that she was the one driving the ship through the canal and got it stuck. But she posted her logs and said, no, 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 you guys are hating on me for being the first female ship captain.
Right.
And she showed a log, she posted it, and she was on board another vessel 200 miles away from the actual Suez Canal in Alexandria. And so she's like, you guys, you're assholes. You're trying to say just because I'm a female pilot or captain, not pilot, captain, that I'm the one that actually got this stuck. No, that wasn't the case. So if you hear about a female captain causing it, no, that's false, fake news. But what's interesting is, though, with the ship in particular, so they freed the ship, right?
Right.
So a lot of time these large cargo ships, like they're not necessarily owned by, they're not necessarily owned by the country that their flag is flown under, right?
Right.
So the mitigation and the litigation for this is really complex because the vessel is owned by a Japanese firm, and it's operated by a Taiwanese shipper, and the flag for the ship is in Panama. So it operates under a Panama flag. It's operated by a Taiwanese crew, and it's owned by a Japanese firm.
What?
Yeah. So the Egyptian, force, canal security, whatever, basically has taken the vessel into a narrow, kind of like side waterway lake
Right.
that kind of stems off of the canal, and they're not letting it leave. And they're saying that if they try to leave, oh no, they won't let it leave. And they're saying that if they try to go to mitigation,
Right.
instead of just giving them money, they said that they'll confiscate the ship. And the ship itself has the value of the amount of. Have you seen how much merchandise it has? It's
No, that's
worth.
the thing. It's like, so the merchandise that's on there may not be owned by them. So are they tying up merchandise for other people?
Oh yeah. So the cargo. This is what's crazy. It says that if the issue of compensation involves litigation, then the cargo will not be allowed to ever leave Egypt, and the value of the cargo on that ship is $3.5 billion.
So just like a small few pennies.
Right. But the ship itself has so much value. That's wild.
Weird.
And it's the largest. It was 30, is it 30 stories tall? Something like that?
Yeah. That's, yeah.
20 stories high. Yeah.
Is that from the bottom
20
of the
stories
ship
high.
or the cargo?
At 20-story, I don't know. It says 20-story high building at sea. So it'd be 20 stories from sea level.
Okay.
I assume.
Wow.
I'm thinking. Anyway, so drama going on in the Suez Canal still. People trying to get their money back. Egypt's, understandably pissed. But it also was. Did you hear about how it got stuck or what happened?
No. Well, kind of.
So
I heard a little bit. I watched the video. That's what I did, and I listened. I talked to a couple people about what they had been reading about it. I mean, it wasn't like, yeah, it was an interesting story. I didn't really care to go get a ton of information, but I'm super glad you did because I find it fascinating that this boat thing has caused such a stir.
Yeah.
What are you eating?
Yeah, because
over pie.
Salmon.
Ooh, close.
Mm-hmm.
Pie of the
Super
sea.
close. Pie of the sea. Wiggly pie.
Yeah.
Over, was it 10 to 13% of the world trade goes through the Suez Canal. Like
Wow.
a massive amount. Um, but yeah, apparently what happened is the ship, as you said, Jordan, like it literally has like, I don't know if it's inches, but it's like feet of margin on either side
Right.
before it would like run ashore because it's such a wide vessel. Um, and it was such a tall vessel as well, you know, being greater than 20 stories high. Um, that what happened is it was a really windy day, and those shipping containers acted like sails on a ship, and it pushed the ship sideways, so it ran ashore basically, and they didn't have enough room to compensate. So basically, it's like a big sail with all those shipping containers. Kind of sketchy.
Yeah. It makes me wonder, like, then that company, what are they going to be on the hook for from those that merchandise that's there, like depreciating and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
That's yeah.
especially if there's, I don't know if shipping containers like that carry much perishable produce.
Right.
Um, I think like potatoes maybe, things that last a little longer.
Maybe they're hauling mushrooms and there's going to be like more of them. It's actually the cargo is growing as they go.
Well, and think about the claims that like the cartel would have. I mean, they're like, man, our product, guys, you haven't shipped this out.
Our product. If they are,
Listen, we've lost.
if they are shipping people, that's I'm gonna
Well,
guess they're not doing so hot, or they might be too
well,
hot.
it might be really hot.
Yeah,
Might be really hot.
I really hope
Um,
that's not the case. I hope it's not the
but
case regardless, but I really hope it's not the case if they're just tying up this cargo and there really are people that they're, you know, according to the rumors, shipping.
yeah. Oh
Because that would be
gosh,
even
yeah, that's pretty.
worse. Like, yeah.
Well, I think that the
Some of those containers
the
are freezers, he said.
oh, okay. Good to know. I wonder if they're still frozen though at
Good
this
point.
point. They might have had a duration of time for their. I guess unless they were like connected to the ship somehow, but I don't know how that could work with that big of a
Right.
platform.
That's a lot.
I don't know. I don't know anything about
Yeah, I
that.
don't know.
I don't know
So
nothing.
apparently, 20-ish stories of containers, and maybe they're freezers. That's a lot of power, just to be sitting there.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I didn't know this. Amador saying that he used to load trucks of produce. So he did, yeah, produce on those cargo ships. So
Yeah, Japan
they
and
must have
China.
done some type of
A lot
some
come out
type
of that
of.
Columbia Gorge that go that direction. I know they ship cherries there. I have friends in that business, and they ship cherries out of it.
Dude, guys, are you guys excited? It's almost cherry season. We're really close to
I'm
cherry
not a
season
big
coming up here.
cherry fan. Haley is,
Not a big cherry fan?
like,
Oh,
to a fault.
whew.
Like,
Like awkward? You're like awkward.
no, like,
You're like, wait, how can you be awkwardly
well,
in love
no,
with cherries?
if you like cherries and you eat a lot of cherries and you eat a lot of
Oh, you get
cherries
poopy.
all at once, yeah, I'm sure you've been there. I'm sure you eat too many cherries,
I've been
and
there.
and you,
I've been there.
yeah, you end up, upping your mile speed, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Indeed. Yeah, cherries can get a little messy.
yeah,
They can stain more things than one for sure.
that is true. Yeah, I've never really been a big cherry fan. I don't like. I'm
Really?
not a really big fruit fan, to be honest.
Is there any
So,
fruit? Like, what's your favorite fruit?
if I was gonna pick a fruit, probably blueberries. Is that a fruit or is that a berry?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, blueberries,
Yeah, those are
raspberries.
great.
I like wild berries. I really like those. Like tart things are good.
I think if I ate when I eat too many blueberries for some reason, I think it's like the skin on them. I get a little bit of an upset stomach because they're a little like a thicker skin and have a little bit more of like a, I don't know, some type of
Did your mom used to can cherries? Mine did.
aspect.
And, like you'd skin them and you'd pop them with the little popper thing to pop the seed out.
You know, I don't recall if she canned cherries.
We
I
definitely
think
did.
there was occasional some fruit she canned. She did. She did like to cook though. She did like to bake.
Your mom still cooks.
Yeah, true, true, true.
I was there. She brought over like a plate of cookies. Like,
Yeah. No, my mom makes a bomb angel food cake. That's for sure. Have you ever had angel food cake?
yeah, I like angel food cake.
So good. Okay, so since you asked, I would say my favorite fruit would probably lean towards.
I thought it was cherries. Like that's where we were going.
Oh no, I wouldn't say they're my favorite. I really like them.
Oh, okay. That's why I
really
didn't
like them.
ask. I just assumed they were your favorite because you were really excited about them.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think I can have just one favorite fruit, but
That's
I'm
cool.
gonna say
Kumquats?
watermelon's a pretty good one for me. Kumquats, yeah.
What are
Watermelon,
those big
and
smelly fruits?
then
Those huge ones at Safeway? You know what I'm talking about? Like I can't,
cantaloupe.
no, not cantaloupe. They're huge. I mean, like 2 feet
What
across.
bigger than watermelon?
Yeah, sometimes. Like I can't remember what they're called. They're big and they're smelly. Apparently, I don't know.
Well, a pumpkin. Pumpkin.
Not a pumpkin. No, not a pumpkin.
Uh, so
I'll think of it, but it's fine.
okay, but I'd have to say, guys, the staple fruit in society has to be apples, in my opinion. I feel like I eat at
I think the
least
staple in our society is bananas.
a fruit.
Yeah.
You think
I think
that's an
I think
interesting
that
question?
I
I'm
think
gonna have to
I
I'm
think
gonna have to
most
Jamie that.
like most people, I bet banana is like the most common thing that people eat. Jackfruit.
Ooh.
Amador's right. It's a jackfruit.
Okay, I have no idea what a jackfruit
I'm gonna
is.
look a picture up, and you're gonna look at it. That's what's gonna happen.
Okay, so the most common. Oh yeah. Oh, very close. So very. We're neck and neck
Are
here
we?
right now.
Ooh.
That's 2017. Let's see if we have a more recent one. So 2017's analysis, guys, according to Statista. No, 2019 now. This is even more accurate. All right, guys, drum roll. The most common fruit eaten in the United States in 2019.
Drum roll, please.
Bananas.
Is it?
At 59. Yep, 59% is bananas.
Ooh.
At
That's
52%. Jackfruit. I have never seen that at Safeway.
Yeah, they have them.
That is.
Look at
There's
that.
no way that's at Safeway.
It looks, yeah.
You've seen those at Safeway?
Yeah, and they're huge. This is a small one.
No.
I've seen bigger ones than that. What is this?
What?
It's like a jackfruit fry or
Oh,
something?
are they like the ones that have like very little flavor? Like it's like
I've never
just
had one.
tastes
They
like
look terrifying. Look at that. Look at the outside of it. Like,
I think those are like eating paper, like wadded up
look at that.
paper spit.
Who saw that and said, "I'll eat that"? Nobody.
Are those for anybody out there? Do those taste like spit wads?
They look.
Maybe. Let me know.
Do they taste like paper?
Is that paper spit wad?
Oh,
So
grapefruit,
the number.
grapefruit is not the most common fruit. Grapefruit is
No,
like.
grapefruit. It's
can-
not even in the top
I can
10
say
here,
this
guys.
now
So
because she's no longer with us, but my great grandma used to send us oranges and grapefruits, and I will tell you, there was a box of grapefruits every year that pretty much didn't get eaten.
I wouldn't be upset about that. I wouldn't be upset with that. Yeah, they can replace meat. That's right, Amador. That's right. I remember that.
Oh, the jackfruit.
Yes, they're
That's
a
why it was on a
substitute for-
burger. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Look at that.
All right, so guys, I'm gonna run through the list of fruits because you're dying to know. Number 1, bananas. Number 2, apples. 3, interesting. I wouldn't have guessed this.
We guessed
Strawberries.
the number 1 and 2.
Yeah.
We need to form a
Yep.
Family Feud team. That's it.
A alliance of
yes.
a fruit alliance.
Yes. No, because we just guessed the number 1 and 2. We could totally win.
We did pretty
We could
good.
do
We did pretty good.
lightning round.
Number 3. Okay, number 3, strawberries. Number 4, grapes.
That totally makes sense.
Grapes make sense. I'm surprised with oranges, guys. Number 5 is watermelon.
Whoa.
Number 6 is oranges. I would have anticipated oranges to be much higher up in there.
I would have too. For sure.
Right? 7 lemons, 8 blueberries, 9 avocados.
Those are a fruit. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and 10 is peaches. 10 is peaches.
Millions.
That's
of
according to
peaches.
2019.
Peaches for me.
Peaches and cream.
Huh.
Yeah, that's
right.
that's good to know. That's good to know.
Okay, so
Oh, dude.
speaking of topics,
What do you got, buddy?
since we, all the different things, there's a couple different things that I want to hit on. Number one,
Yes.
I do think we should talk about what we were talking about before, but I think we should kind of end on that. So let's kind of shoot through some things real quick because there was a couple things that happened this week that I found interesting, and maybe you have some comments on them. Number
Okay.
one, Laura Trump has a podcast. She does this thing. I guess it's pretty big. I've never listened to it.
Who? Laura Trump?
Yeah,
Is that what you said?
she's the daughter-in-law to. She's married to one of Trump's sons.
Daughter-in-law. Okay.
And
Got it.
she did an interview with him. It's the first interview that he's really done, like long interview,
Interesting.
since he was done being president. And it got taken off Facebook, and Facebook came back and said, "The voice of Trump is not allowed on our platform." That was their
So
response.
her
It says it breaks
her-
their policy for her to publish something with his voice, like
Mm,
his
okay.
heard audible voice on their platform.
Because he was banned from Facebook.
Yeah, his page was. I don't know that he
But was
was.
he like was his as a profile?
I don't know if he has a personal
Okay.
profile. I'm gonna guess he probably doesn't use it. He just uses a page. That's what most people do that are that well known.
Okay.
Anyway, I just thought that was funny. It's like, what, like, you scared of it or what? So anyway, it grew Rumble apparently by millions and millions and millions of views because people are like, well, I want to hear what he has to say, and people thought that's sort of dumb. Like, why not just let his voice be heard? If he didn't say anything that was wrong, they literally just said, they didn't say this is what he said that was wrong that broke our policy. They said our policy is his voice will not be heard on our platform. That's what they said. I thought that was pretty.
That's
It
fascinating.
is. It's
That's fascinating
especially because
because
they could be getting ads. They could be like they're gonna generate revenue off that. They know they're gonna get views and clicks.
right.
And maybe it is, and because if you still go and look at the YouTube channel for our current president, President Houseplant, they his has more dislikes than likes and very very little views. Like no viewership for anything that they put on that page. Whereas it used to have millions and millions and millions of views as soon as something would get put up in the prior administration. Didn't matter if it was Trump or someone else. Tons of viewership. So maybe it's just they don't want they're afraid that one's going to be more popular than the other. Who knows? It definitely was when it went to Rumble because Rumble didn't care. They just let them on there and let them broadcast it. Well, she moved all of her platforms to Clout Hub, which is a publishing platform, kind of like Minds and some of the other ones. And I guess they struck a deal with her, and she's doing great over there. And millions of people moved over to there and Rumble to watch her show. So I just think it's weird.
Mm.
Like they lost viewership and eyeballs solely just because they didn't want his voice to be heard.
Yeah, that's interesting to have a ban of individual on another person's platform, I guess is what it would be, right? So they're not necessarily banning her, like she can still be on that platform, but that in particular
Yep.
guest cannot be on.
Yes.
They won't allow her show on. Okay, I gotcha.
Right.
Okay,
But she just
yeah, it's interesting.
because of that, she's like, well, if that's how you're going to censor, I'm just not using your platform anymore. So she's just moving.
Yeah. So was she has a podcast?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying? And then she, I assume, puts that podcast onto like iTunes and
Yeah.
Spotify and
Yeah.
other
So far,
other formats.
the only one that removed it was Facebook.
Okay. And then so basically she's doing what we're doing, except it would be like us having a guest and then them not allowing this episode to be on.
Yep.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's within Facebook's current privileges to do so, but I think that also is not necessarily
Not a wise decision, I
the
don't think.
smartest decision on their part. And like I've always said, and I will always say, the only way to beat bad speech is with better speech. And if you
Right.
think somebody has crappy speech, then you need to be willing to talk to them about that and why, and back up reasons for why you feel the way you do.
Yeah.
And
One of the-
or if you don't, and this is even a better point, if you don't know why you feel the way you do, then you really need to evaluate why you feel the way you do.
well,
if that's actually a valid
honestly,
reason.
that's what I've told people is like, if you are offended by something that I say or someone else says because it disagrees with your point of view, and you're so offended that you can't even hear it, I call BS. I don't think you're as grounded in your beliefs as you think it is. If your beliefs cannot stand up to the scrutiny of someone else's opinion, I don't buy it. You don't believe your opinion.
That, and it's good to have a reason for why you have that opinion,
Right.
more than just the way it feels.
Yeah, feelings aren't fact.
Yeah.
They-
Now that doesn't mean in certain situations that feelings aren't valid.
I didn't
and
say
that
they're not
feelings
valid.
don't.
They just
No, I'm speaking.
Yeah.
I'm speaking for myself.
Yeah.
Because in the past, I've worked on a lot of stuff as far as emotions go, and
I remember
when
when you
I
went
was
through
younger,
your pitching fits phase. It was really rough.
it was really hard, right?
Yeah, it's tough.
I know. I always had to go to the corner. It was really annoying. But yeah, there's value in emotions and recognizing emotions
Right.
and learning how to utilize those, and be healthy in those. But there aren't necessarily, because you feel frustrated doesn't necessarily mean that you're right, even
Right.
if you don't doesn't validate your
Well,
opinion.
and I just use it as an opportunity. It's like if there's a ton of things that I believe that a lot of people don't believe. And if someone has a different viewpoint, I can choose to not listen to them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I can literally just choose to change the channel. I can choose to not be on there. Now, some people wrongfully call that canceling. Cancel culture is different. It's where you're removing everyone from everywhere and you're saying that this is illegal for them to say and they should be removed from every single platform. But me just canceling Disney Plus is not cancel culture. That's me saying I don't want to subscribe.
Yeah,
Me changing
right.
the channel is not cancel culture. I saw a thing today that
Now,
said it had a picture of the Tom and Jerry cat poking a gun through a wall, and the gun was coming
mhm.
up and pointing at his head, and it said like Christians on the cat, and it was like talking about cancel culture, been canceling people since whatever, and I was like, that's not the Christian culture. There are some Christians out there that probably need to be talked to about how they talk to other people that disagree with them. That's fine. That's totally fair. I think that's every single group of people has that person that needs to be taught a lesson and told how to treat people that don't agree with them. But that doesn't they just them choosing to not engage or support or be a part of something doesn't mean they're cancel culture. That it's the lie now.
yeah, and that goes on both extremes
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah, there's people
Gary
like that
brought
in
up
every
a
group.
Gary brought up a, I don't know how we're going back to the bananas, but Gary brought up a point and said we like bananas because we came from apes. We're going back to the bananas.
We're back there
But,
again.
it's interesting. It's an interesting point, Gary. I would say that potentially there could be some correlation with our palates from evolution and time. However, bananas did originate in Southeast Asia, I'm pretty sure. And I don't think if depending on your opinions on evolution, micro, macro, whatever, most people would believe that majority of the population would have originated in Africa, maybe kind of in that more northern portion as well. So there wouldn't have been a lot of bananas at that time in that region. But I like where you're coming from. It's funny.
It's true.
Good things.
It is funny. He's like, you know what you just did? You just did what Nerdzu was like. Actually,
Actually,
it wasn't until the fourth turning when Thanos was with. Yeah. So.
The flux capacitor
Yeah.
and Weanal sprockets
Yep.
need adjusting.
Exactly. Yes. That's what you just did. It's cool. I'm fine with it. I just find it funny, and I wanted to point it out because it happened.
I love it. I am a nerd, and I'm proud.
No, you totally.
I don't
are.
know if I'm a. I think I'm a nerd.
You're a nerd
I
in
don't think I'm a
some
geek.
areas. No. Okay. Here's the term. It's computer nerd
Yes.
math geek. That's the way it works.
Oh, is that how it works?
Yes.
Computer nerd, math geek.
That's a difference between a geek and a nerd. You could be both. Venn diagram.
I
that.
dabble in both, but I would say I'm heavier on the nerd side than the geek side.
Yep.
Yeah, I get you. I
Yeah.
get you. That's cool. Okay, so let's go into our topic real quick that we were debating and discussing beforehand, and then I'm going to go on to some. And then I think we should end it on some of the interesting research things that I had.
That's fine.
If that's okay. That's okay. So Jordan and I were kind of having a little bit more of a heated discussion.
Which we can proceed with. We're still friends, and we're fine if we disagree. It's okay if I'm right and Curtis is wrong.
You know what?
And go ahead.
I would rather actually have friends.
I beat
I
you
would
to
personally
that.
rather. I would rather have friends that don't agree with me on a lot of things than that agree with me on things, because it would be boring to me if I had people that agreed on every single thing in every single way. Okay, so we were talking about vaccines in particular, and I know some people are tired of the subject, but I think it's still a good subject to come across and discuss because it's still going to be prevalent, and people are still getting currently vaccinated right now for COVID, and there's going to be, I think, correlations to COVID vaccination as well as correlations to standard recommended guideline vaccinations for children, and not necessarily whether you should or shouldn't have them, but what involvement in society that you potentially may be restricted from by not having them, or your children not having them potentially, I guess, because we're starting to see conversation in the news circles of, are you going to be allowed to fly if you don't have vaccinations? Are you going to be allowed to travel without vaccinations? Are you going to be and this in particular is applying to the COVID vaccine. And should those be restrictions because it potentially could exclude and alienate individuals if they don't have the opportunity to have the vaccines, which is actually currently a fact. There's people that don't have the opportunities or the availability to get the vaccine, even if they wanted it
Mm.
necessarily. But then B, if people just don't agree with the concept of being vaccinated. So it's an interesting, heated topic that people can feel passionate about because it could potentially affect the way they live. And I'm gonna let Jordan start off the way he feels about it, and then I'll.
Yeah, so my perspective on this, getting into the nerd stuff, is number one, we have an example of something that looks like this already, and that was rolled out in China, and it's basically their social credit score, if you want, and where they basically track every single thing that you do, and they limit what you do based on that score. If you do something that they don't like, if you post something that they don't like, or whatever, they can restrict you from taking a, a subway. They can restrict you from taking a cab. They can restrict your internet speeds, all through being tracked. And that's already. And so you had made comment to a video that I'll put a link for. Is Naomi Wolf, I think it is, talked about it from her. She's a tech person, from her tech perspective. She said this is already here, and they want to be able to scan you, and that's why it seemed odd at first. But as she started kind of connect the dots, I realized she's not so far off. In fact, I think this is where a lot of people are going. And if you want to know kind of like my opinion as to why, I think it all really has to do with money and greed. Number one, because of comments that have been made by people like Bill Gates saying like, well, why would you spend billions on this vaccine? You're not going to make any money. He said, well, I'm going to spend billions so I can make trillions. So this is $1 trillion market that they're looking at by requiring it. Whether they work or not, that's not even the argument there. That's just that's the kind of money that these people are seeing, and so they're seeing dollar signs. Like if we can get people to be required to take these, there's dollar signs. So that's one piece of the puzzle. I think is a really scary thing when you bring in greed and you mix that into this mix. It's a terrible recipe for controlling people in ways that we shouldn't, and it's already got signs to be tracked, like that social credit score in China now, which we don't want. We don't want that in a free society. I think, this is my opinion, but I think I'm right, is that currently I'm not required to go get vaccinated. If I don't want my kids to get vaccinated, there are things that I can do to not have them vaccinated in the schools. Now, I know that some of those have been reduced, but I can also just choose to not put them in the schools and choose what schools I want to put my kids into. And so that's fine. But when you start to restrict people from either buying groceries, getting into a car, getting into a bus or whatever, at that point,
Which is what you're saying China's doing
which I'm saying
for vaccines
they're not
in
doing it for
particular?
vaccines, but they're already doing it with social credit scores, which are very, very similar, and the way that
Which
they're
is
wanting to implement these is the same. And so if you do that and you're giving up that sort of control to them, I'm not. So I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I have plenty of vaccinations. The military required a ton of them, but I'm vaccine hesitant. I want to do my own research, and I'm not talking about like Jenny McCarthy's book or whatever. I think she needs to go back and do what she's good at, which is not even stuff I want to look at. But um, vaccines is not where she's at, and she caused a lot of people a lot of headache that didn't need to have that headache. So there's definitely that like misinformation side of things that I think needs to be talked about. When we get into this whole require it in order to do things, it doesn't matter what culture or what religion you look at. You look at their end time like projections of what things are. That's typically where those things lead. Look at any movie that gets to the end. It's like these requirements for people to be socially active, or else you're restricted because you're not following our rules. I just think that's a dangerous path to go down. Like with your free speech thing. Like I think the solution to bad speech is more good speech. I think the solution to people being hesitant about certain things is more education. You start forcing them, and you get into this. What if you force something that I don't agree with? And it isn't good. Like people, so you have to think like maybe someone is good in control right now that has all the answers. But what if someone bad gets into that spot and you've given them all the control, and all of a sudden they can give you whatever they want, and they can require it and tell you can't do anything if you don't do it. That's a scary place to be. So why not just more education? If some people get it, if you really believe in it and a good portion of the people have it, it should be fine. But like right now, go get the vaccine, but you still got to wear your mask. That That tells me right there you're not confident in your vaccine.
So, um, okay. So I like a lot of what you're saying. I think that it's a very like Black Mirror kind of
Yes, I
scenario
thought of that
when
episode.
when you have social programs that equate to almost your worth. And I think I would not necessarily correlate vaccinations, particularly overall, with the entire um, equating to a person's value, like China is kind of looking gearing towards. Um, but I think that what you alluded to, the concern um, that it might inhibit somebody from being able to do something
Hmm.
in their daily life or their kids. Um, it kind of goes both ways. Like potentially, um, an individual could, like you were saying with masks, right? If you don't want to go out in public without a mask, you can choose whether you go out in public or not. But with vaccinations in particular, um, I think it should be. I'm leaning more towards it being a state regulated kind of mandatory situation, and I think that's actually technically what it is right now. I think it is
Well,
vaccinations.
I don't think the feds can do that right now unless they
Right.
change something. But even
Well,
then, I
and
don't
I
think the
actually,
state should be able to
well,
say
let me
this is
let
what
me
you have to
say
do.
let me say my piece though.
Yeah.
Um, I do think states should have the right to dictate their mandates based off of good evidence-based practice, and I think that throughout time, vaccinations in particular have been one of the most successful public health safety measures above all, outside of maybe excluding clean water. I think clean water probably was the number one like safety measure that public health provides for individuals, safe, clean drinking water. And then after that, I think immunizations had made one of the biggest impacts on society
Hmm.
outside of that. And so when it gets to certain diseases in particular, I think what happens is when vaccines control diseases, parents and society are less likely to witness the devastating effects of some of those preventable diseases firsthand. And so it's easily, and then from that point on, it's easy to misplace the importance of preventing those diseases because you haven't necessarily either experienced it yourself or your children's haven't been threatened by it. And so you get this overarching like concern as what you were saying, like these are like, I'm hearing now rumors that this actually might cause more harm than good. And so people are basing their opinions off of not actually valid evidence, but they're basing it off of their opinions and their emotions. And so you're getting this kind of cycle of, I don't like this because I read on Facebook that she didn't like this. And then you get this continued upheaval. Now, do I think that individual vaccines maybe need to have um, different approaches? Yeah, for sure. I don't think every single vaccine is required or should be required by every state. But I think there definitely are certain vaccines that I think should be required by states. In particular, some of the pediatric ones, especially that I've seen firsthand when kids don't get them. I've seen them die from them like really, really quick and really bad deaths. And it was more along like in Amish communities where they had really bad risk factors for like tetanus in particular. Like when you see your first 8-month-old with lockjaw and they can't open their mouth and they can't breathe and they're just like clenched, it's horrible.
Hmm.
And you see like, no, this is like really important and valuable. Now, granted, in those situations, it's not necessarily something that's going to be communicating to other children, but
Right.
there are diseases that are communicable, such as certain meningeal infections, and certain like whooping cough diseases, pertussis, certain things that are a little bit. Obviously, polio was one of the bigger ones in particular that we can reference. So I
Right.
think that there is room and need for requirements for certain particular vaccinations when we have a history of very valuable evidence supporting the efficacy and the very, very, very low risks.
I guess my pushback to that is, and I don't think those should need to go away. I don't think we need to get rid of vaccines at all. I'm not To be very, very clear with everyone, I'm not at all in that camp. But is there a risk with vaccines? Like just flat out. I'm not low, not high. Are there risks with vaccines?
Um,
Like, I mean,
I think, yeah, I think there's a standard risk with
right.
everything.
So there, yeah. So
No
the
more
answer,
than standard. No more than
so
baseline.
the answer is yes. There is. What it's different for all of them. It's different for certain people. So if there is, when I choose to go get a license and drive a car, and I assume those risks when I do it. I can choose to not drive a car and be Amish and ride a horse and join those communities. But there's risks for going out in public that I take and I choose to do.
Hmm.
I assume those on my own, of my own
Sure.
volition when I get onto the
Yeah.
highway. If as soon as you take that away and you tell me I have to take this risk for other people, I think that's wrong. I think teaching people about it is a good thing to do, and so that most people would be accepting of that based on good evidence and good science. But as soon as you start to take that away, you start to chisel away at people's freedoms, which we have in this country. And so if someone chooses to not, they need to be able to make that choice regardless of what it is. And and then you're kind of for, even if you tell them like, well, if you don't, you can't fly on this airplane. If you don't, you can't go here, which there's already a lot of people stepping out and going, hey, this is a bad idea, that are in the world, not just in
Hmm.
the US, that are saying this is a bad idea. This is a step down the path that, my previous example with China. But if there's a risk at all, even if it's 0.01%, that needs to be the freedom of the person to do it, especially in this country. You
Mm.
can't start forcing. Have good
Yeah,
education and teach people
and that's what
about the
it is though.
risks. And if they
In
choose not to, they choose not to.
And see, that's how I see it being though. In particular, that's how it currently is. Like, and I'm not alluding to the specific COVID necessarily, but that's what it is to a degree. So
No, I'm
like
not
in the
referring
in
to COVID either.
yeah.
That vaccine in and of itself, no one can tell me it's been tested.
So
Like at least it's been tested
well,
well.
it has been
There hasn't
tested,
been enough time for them to know the
but
long term effects of it at all. There
but
hasn't been enough time.
but let me say this. Going back to your vehicle analogy, yes, it's true. You choose to get into the vehicle, but then that means you have to obey the laws of the rules of the road, right?
Yeah,
So if you choose to put your kids into school, then you have to obey the rules of going into that
that's
school,
fine.
such as if the
I
school
disagree,
requires
and I
vaccination. Yeah, and you could disagree, but you still need to obey
yeah,
the
it's
rules of
fine.
the
But
of the road.
there's a lot of things I don't put my kids in school for. Like
Yeah,
that I think they get a
exactly.
better education not in the school. Like to be quite
Right,
honest, like there are some school systems is fine.
yeah,
Like
a
you can go
different.
back and forth. Different kids are different. There's a ton of people. Like I was at a Republican meeting the other night, and a guy was running for school board, and he got up and he said, "I used to think that online school was stupid," and he was a foster parent, and he said, "I learned through this. I had a foster kid who was an F student, and now they're an A student." And they're thriving in this. And I realized we need more options and we need people to be speaking for those options. So whether I agree or disagree with this whole pandemic thing, it's taught me that some kids thrive in other ways. And he goes, that's not
Yeah,
true of all my kids. Some of them really need to go back to school.
totally.
So
So real quick, I
anyway,
wanna address a couple questions real quick. So from Rachel, she asked a question of if the risks are so low, and I'm assuming she's pertaining to the COVID vaccine, or maybe
or just
just
any
I'm not
vaccine. Like
or
it's,
vaccines in
yeah,
particular.
she's the
If the
vaccine
risks are so low, why does the government protect them from lawsuits? Kind of in the same way of like a medication, right? So like if you have amoxicillin, let's say, which is a penicillin medication, right? You dispense this penicillin medication to a person. The pharmacy is producing maybe like I don't know, like a billion pills, and it goes to maybe 300 million individuals every year. I don't know. That's whatever the amount is, right? So no matter what you take, somebody's going to have an allergic reaction to something, even if it's a banana, when you deal with 300 million individuals. So you have to have a degree of liability protection from not necessarily manufacturer error or even production error or whatever distribution error. You have to have some form of protection when you're dealing with such a broad range of individuals with such broad range of potential effects, even though when you do a study, and certain medications, right, like Jordan was alluding to, have been studied more than others. That's why the FDA does have such a stringent, usually long time it takes to pass certain regulations and regulatory bodies that then approve after the FDA, and then you have through different steps. Now, a side note, I'll say, pertaining to the Pfizer vaccine in particular, and a little bit of the Moderna, because they're pretty close. The Johnson & Johnson, I haven't really researched that much. And then the AstraZeneca, I haven't gone much into either. But part of the reason that I have more confidence in this vaccine, even though there has been an expedited production of it, is that we've never had a situation where we've had a vaccine studied from a worldwide cohort level at that level. So normally we'll have a cohort of a private pharmaceutical company, say if it's Pfizer or whoever, or Purdue, whatever. They'll be the ones that are conducting that study with their group at a smaller number over a longer period of time, because they either have to do more people and they can't do them, or they can't study that many people all at once because they don't have the resources. It costs billions of dollars to do that. So when you have a worldwide population and a worldwide funding, you can have a much larger group of people in a shorter period of time because you have larger funding for that. Now,
but the long term, is what concerns me there, especially because a lot of the mRNA, like the vaccines before this one, were not approved. And a lot of those studies resulted in like not some great effects on some of the animals that they tested that on. And so I'm like, hey, I want to see it last. I want to see it go a lot longer before I even contemplate doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, I already know I had COVID, so I got a natural vaccine, and I just don't desire to go and do it again.
Did you actually get tested for antibodies?
No, but I don't care either.
I thought. No, but you said you had it, so I was curious, if you actually had it.
My wife tested positive
because a lot of people
like a week after me,
and
I had basically had a fever that went up really fast, slept for a day, felt kind of crummy for a day after that, and then was fine. And then she tested positive, so I don't know what else I would have had.
Yeah. So I would say, as pertaining to mRNA, I actually would push back a little bit on mRNA. It has been used quite a bit before, and there's been one case of a vaccine that was in Southeast Asia where there was a potential for a correlation of a neurological effect within the mRNA vaccine, but it wasn't actually due to the mRNA component. That when they traced it back, it was one of the actual not substrates, but basically like a filler within the vaccine that they used in Southeast Asia that would not have been approved to be used within the US anyways.
That's fair.
But mRNA has been used for a lot of things. It was used for remember when Zika was blowing up?
Yeah.
Like in South America and in Florida, they were using mRNA for Zika. They'd been using it for rabies, cytomegalovirus that you'll see in pregnant women too. So I mean, it's been used a decent amount, but it never had a ton of funding before now to be worldwide.
I don't know. I guess that's the group I fall into, and I'd heard that term a while back, and I was like, that's me. I'm vaccine hesitant. It's like there's certain things like I stepped on a nail really, really bad, and I went and got a tetanus shot. Like I'm not I made sure it was just tetanus because I hate the mixed ones, and it's already a painful shot anyway. But that's where I'm at with that.
Tetanus,
but as far as forced, I think that's just not the best way. So it's just like cancel culture is not a way to get rid of people who you might think are false. The best thing to do is better education and more speech. And I think that in a free country and a free society, to keep it that way, that is the best way to go about people's health. And do it with other things too. Do it with how people eat. Like we never talk about how obesity is like an insane thing, and how does that affect? It affects our entire economy more than anything, and we don't talk about it. It's fascinating. It's like, no, you're fat shaming. It's like, no, I'm not. I really care about you. You are not healthy, and our food pyramid is upside down, and it's driven by what?
What would be fascinating?
Like go back to what it's driven by. It's
if
driven
there
by
was,
money, which is
yeah,
that's
so
the bad approach.
if there was regulations based off of an individual's health, like insurance coverage, like pre-existing conditions kind of thing, or if there was like responsibilities, like if a parent had a kid and they were,
Yeah.
six times
Imagine
the
what they would do
expected
right now
BMI.
if we did
Yeah,
that.
that's interesting.
People would be freaking the heck out.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
over this, and what it is. This is why it's so similar to
or
me.
smoking,
As I was
even smoking.
listening to that
You
the
know.
Naomi video, which you kind of scoffed at. But if you think about it like this: you're already seeing it with the mask culture, and now with the vaccine culture. You're seeing it infiltrate churches. You're seeing it infiltrate social groups. You're seeing it infiltrate families that either won't talk and is like, well, are you vaccinated? Like I'm seeing that now on social media. Like, oh, I'm vaccinated. I'm team
Uh,
Moderna. I'm team whatever.
Social media.
When you do that, you're making it now a social credit score. They are normalizing it for us
I
right
think
now.
I would agree that there is a, um, yeah, and it's not surprising though to me. Like when you go through a worldwide pandemic with a worldwide lockdown over a year, and then there's a vaccine that potentially puts people in different categories or classes, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like
Yeah, it
seems like
shouldn't. And like
not
we know
surprising, right?
so much about this now. It's like tonight. I'll say it outright. Like I went to Safeway, I had to grab something, and I know the stores that don't care, and I just walk. I don't wear a mask. I'm like, and the reason why is to show people like you don't have to be afraid. Like if like by all means, if you have like some sort of pre-existing condition or something, you probably even before the world of COVID should have washed your hands better, taken care of yourself,
Oh,
not gone out in public, all that kind of stuff. But now all of a sudden we have this fear over it.
can I say something though, man?
Go.
I really like not having to shake hands right now. Like
Oh, in your
from
job
a
for
person.
sure.
Oh my God, it's so nice. It's so nice because I know I'm not like hand-to-hand contact is a big way of spreading germs. And so not having to have that requirement, a social requirement, is it's so fantastic.
Yeah,
Okay, so real quick, guys, we're gonna change subjects here. I'm gonna get on to two last things that I really wanted to hit on with.
do it.
One's kind of on the science realm of things that I found was super fascinating lately. Um, there's been a really cool new form of, it's called ecological e, is it eDNA? I think it's environmental DNA. Yeah, so eDNA, and they found a way of extracting DNA from water. So water samples, like ecologists or biologists, marine biologists, whatnot, were trying to figure out like what type of animals lived in a biome, and so they were able to collect a scoop of water, and then through a form of like electrolysis, basically, figure out what forms of DNA codes were living in that water. Okay, and then they were break down like, okay, there's 15 of these species that we know live in this microbiome. Okay, so that's pretty cool, right?
Right.
But what they were able to do that though is extrapolate that. Now, this is where it gets trippy, guys. They've started to use eDNA process to collect DNA from air sources.
Oh, I saw that in your
So
title.
in a room, they had a room, okay? And they had
How would they know
different
where it's
types of,
coming from?
well, this is what they did. They had a room, and they had a room with like naked, they tested it on a couple different species. So they had one room with naked mole
I was to
rats,
say,
okay?
police say mole rats.
Yeah, naked mole rat, naked
Nice.
mole rat. Um, and and then they took the mole rat out, and then they put this machine in that collected the air, and then they actually were able to extract DNA from the filtration, and they found in that room naked mole rat DNA. Okay, so now what they're taking is from that step is this eventually they're saying could be used on the level of, where do you think they're going to jump from here? Investigations, basically.
Oh yeah.
So it's going to turn into
I
opportunities
was
for
going way further than that, like cloning.
cloning. No, 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 no. Well, maybe eventually, but no, they're seeing like, okay, this guy, he was murdered. Let's take an air sample from this room and see what DNA samples we get out of the air. How wild is that?
That is crazy.
That'd be trippy. And
It
to
almost
Dave,
seems like a Minority Report.
yeah, I get that vibe a little bit. I get that. Um, to Dave Chandler, naked mole rats, they might wear clothes. I haven't seen one wear clothing. I think the nakedness is maybe alluding to their lack of furriness, but they probably do wear clothes sometimes. It's a good question. It's a great question. Okay, and then the last thing, guys, it might sound like I'm harping on them a lot, but I feel like it's really important, and this is maybe one of my pulpits that I'm on. Jordan has his own convictions, but a conviction that I'm really concerned about is the Chinese hard press that we're seeing across the world right now. And I am really stressed about the Chinese monopoly or takeover. The in the Philippines right now, the Chinese government has not unleashed, but basically unleashed a large flotilla of like over 200 vessels. There's a really cool satellite video that you can see that I've posted, and it just shows all these massive barges and ships. Basically, so the Philippines in the southern China Sea, the Philippines have claim to these small islands and reefs that are kind of in between China and the Philippines, and the Chinese government is trying to take over those resources because there's a lot of potential good like mining and resources in that area. And it's the Philippine land, but the Chinese said, "Oh, we're actually just taking refuge here because there was a storm." And it's like, "No, there was no storm. You guys have been there for over a month now. Hundreds of Chinese vessels." And the Chinese government just recently gave privileges to the Coast Guard, the Chinese Coast Guard, that if anybody interferes with their vessels, they have freedom to open fire on those vessels. And so that then connects to, so the Philippine government is like stressed, saying, "Hey, we got to get this under control." But then what we're seeing now is, and you guys have probably seen this on the news, Taiwan is like really concerned that the Chinese government is about to invade them. And one of our
They should have been afraid of that like in November.
yeah, well, they probably were.
I mean,
And
that's
I'm
why we were sending ships through there as just kind
right.
of a show of force.
Right, right. But one of the top U.S. military commanders was actually making comments, and they were asking him questions. And he's saying like, within the next couple years, he's pretty confident China's going to try to invade Taiwan. Um,
I wouldn't doubt it.
and the what they're doing is what's called gray tactics right now. So what they're doing is the Chinese like military is they're taking ships and crossing over into Taiwanese water, causing the Taiwanese to try to come out and intersect them, and then they're flying ships or planes over
That's
Taiwanese.
impressive.
It's a cool ship. It's like
Yeah.
on Avengers. But they're flying their planes over Taiwanese airspace, and so the Taiwanese, they're trying to basically just wear the Taiwanese out until they get numb to it, until eventually it's the real deal. Like they just take more and more and
Yeah.
more and more.
And this is where like even our previous topic, like all these things kind of weave together. Is like China wants to be the power. They've wanted to for a while. They don't hide that. They say it.
They say it,
And
yeah.
that's like the title of what we said. It's like listen for when they say the quiet part out loud. They've said it many, many times. And there was a video, and we're gonna put in our link or in our show notes that Curtis and I watched. It's a Russian defector that talks about these different tactics that they're using. Because you can't just if China just came to the U.S. and tried to invade us like they may do to Taiwan, it wouldn't be as good. Like it wouldn't go over as well. But to infiltrate us with some of their ideas, and that's where I think things like a vaccine passport and all that kind of stuff are so similar to things that they do to their people, and they're not a free society. That it's like I get some of the health benefits and everything, but if you're going to force vaccines, then force what people eat. Force what like go that far. If you really care like about that kind of stuff, you're going to get to that point, and then it's just ultimate control. Or do you actually believe in freedoms? Like,
Yeah, I'd say there's a difference between what you eat though and a single
it's
vaccine.
literally
Because
what you
what you
put in your
eat is your
body.
entire, yeah, but what you eat is a daily thing that you require every single day. For a child to get vaccinated, it's a one-time shot, and you're not going to
But
affect their
but as I
entire
say, there's
livelihood.
risks,
And the
and it's
cost,
and
and the
it's how
cost too,
you
usually is covered by the state for those vaccinations,
Right.
where the
That
food
doesn't.
is not.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, but the cost to the economy, the cost. That's the road you're going down when you start to force things into people
Mm.
and tell them, hey, this is how you can participate in society. What does that sound like? It sounds like 1984. It sounds like all these things that have been like
Yeah, I
pointing
think there's
towards
a
these types of things.
responsibility for the
And so then
government
you,
though
but
to
then you get the
protect
people to
people.
hate each other. Like we're talking about, like the contests. Like you get people to hate each other, and then they start doing their work. They
Yeah.
start to break down the society in a way. It's like if you're scared,
Yes.
don't go out. If you're
However,
not,
that is a little bit different, I think, in the terms of vaccinations. There's a responsibility for the government to have, and to the state government too, to protect an individual from and from communicable diseases in particular. People have grown numb to the fact that there are really big bad diseases out there that can really hurt people, and they unfortunately haven't witnessed those themselves. And so, because of that, they don't recognize that there is a degree of protection that the government is providing by having those regulations. In the same way the government has protections with speed limits, you don't have to go out and drive. Your kids don't have to go to public school. You're making that individual choice as
but
well. So I wouldn't say there's a
I
direct correlation.
understand, but there are risks you assume. So you're thinking about it in the opposite direction as
Right.
far as the driving thing goes, because those car manufacturers, if they did something wrong, they're on the hook for the death. They're on
Yeah,
the
but
hook
they're not on
to
the hook
pay for
for the
those
death.
things.
They're not on the
So
hook for
if
the
they're
death of the
really
person who
confident in
drives
those
their car off
things,
a cliff.
I say do not block at all. 100% do not block lawsuits to those companies if they kill someone.
Yeah. I
I
think
mean,
that's same. You could say the same thing for anything. If someone kills someone, they should be allowed to be lawsuit. And then
but
and
then
then you
why do
take it to
they
the court.
if they're so confident? And that's where I say, like, it's a
Well, I
risk
don't think they do.
that you should
They
assume.
have to, because that's the difference, is that it would be like suing a car dealership if somebody drove their own car off a cliff. That's not the car dealership's fault.
No, but if there was a faultiness in the car,
Yeah, then that is a liability, and that is a responsibility
but
for
that
car
but
dealerships. In
but
the same way, if there's a faultiness in a medication, that's that manufacturer's responsibility.
but if it's not faulty and it hurts the person,
Yeah,
they're
that's
not.
the same thing as a car. If a
But
car is not
they're
faulty
currently
and it
blocked
hurts a
from that.
person,
We've gone over that. Like they're currently blocked from, like they're like, we can't be sued. Sorry.
no,
If something
that's
happens.
not the case. That's not the case. That was the case from a case that took place in South America,
Mm.
particularly with Pfizer, but that wasn't the situation that took place in the United States across all board.
I thought that they had,
But
for this one,
but
they were trying to get that because it was
but
so quick.
the main thing was that I'm alluding to was the pediatric vaccinations in particular. But you're right as far as the long game, your video that you're alluding to. There
Yeah.
is a long game play that these larger countries, such as China and former USSR, were pushing to
Yeah.
try to cause dissension. Or dissension, is that the right a word? Dissension.
Dissension and subversion. Like those are the
Dissension
two.
and subversion within our country, right?
Mhm.
And
It's
it
fascinating.
and
'Cause it's from
social
30 years
social
ago.
and social media is a delightful tool for that now.
Oh yeah, for certain. But the
Yeah.
thing is like we've also been trained to do that. Like they use that as a tool because social media can be a good thing too. It's just like a car can be a weapon that kills a group of people, but it can also be something that gets you to the hospital and saves your life. Like there are different uses for everything. Like a gun can protect you, but also in the
Mhm.
hands of a psycho, it can be a very scary thing if you don't have something to fire back at them and stop them.
Mhm.
So it's like these different tools used incorrectly are bad, but we have certain freedom. But yeah, anyway, I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah.
But
But
I think
so
forced anything like so here's the difference between here's the
tough.
difference between um with a car, a license to drive a car. So there are there are things that are rights and there are things that are privileges. And so when we discuss these different things, there's a right to free speech. That's and in our Constitution it's written as these are inalienable, that are God given. Whatever God or creator or whatever, it's like these are things that we as people have grouped around and said we believe we are entitled. No government has to give it to me. It must protect these rights. We have freedom of speech. We have freedom to bear arms or protect ourselves. That's not just hunting rifles. And that is to protect that And it even says to protect us from a government that won't protect the first one. So, I mean, that's the verbiage that's used there. And so these rights are different than privileges. So it's a like
Yeah.
that's how my
So you
dad
don't have
explained
the
that's how my
yeah.
dad explained driving to me when I was a kid. It's like you have a privilege to drive and that privilege can be revoked. So, if I have a right to a free market and to sell things and everything and all of a sudden that's taken away because you have put a stipulation on it that I must do what you say, that's wrong. That's not a privilege anymore. You've now made a right a privilege,
I
and now
guess.
you started pitting people against each
Yeah,
other.
I think I see where you're kind of going with that. Although the Constitution doesn't say, the legal framework doesn't say a right to a free market, which is interesting. It says, yeah, you have rights. You have a right,
To
inalienable human rights, a
yes,
freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion,
mm-hmm.
a right to keep and bear arms,
Yeah,
freedom from cruel and unusual punishment, and a fair trial.
yeah.
Right?
So a lot of those things are going into public and grouping with people, and if you now put a stipulation on that, you as a government are now becoming that entity as to which it says should be protecting those rights. Now, you can educate. You
Yeah,
can
you have
say,
a right
"Hey,
to
you
do
should
those
do this.
things.
It's a good idea to wash your hands," but there's no law that says you have to.
Right.
We should. Like, just so we're super aware. We should wash our hands.
I don't know, guys. I mean, you can use hand sanitizer if you want. Soap and water, if you got big chunks on your hands, I'd recommend soap and water, but hand sanitizer is good too.
But that's washing
Um,
anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got some TILs for you guys.
Let's do it.
You got TILs? All right, guys. So my first TIL is recent studies. Today I learned, after reading about recent studies, today I learned that thick thighs actually save lives. So apparently, those with bigger
Where are we
thighs
going
have been
with
found.
this?
Listen. Those with bigger thighs have been found to be at a lower risk of heart disease and premature death compared to those with higher body mass in other areas.
But is that
So
just due to like the not fat around organs, like you're carrying fat low, and
that's
it's
actually a great question. So a lot of cases, there's all the time on imaging, I'll see people with fat around their liver. Okay, that's one of the most common places I'll see fat. It will really surprise you. Somebody on the outside can look
skinny fat.
not
Oh,
not
believe
fat,
me, I've had
right?
DEXA scan.
But on the inside,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see their organs are just caked with fat. So they have found, though, that studies have been showing that if you have fat more so around your thighs in particular, that actually has very minimal risk in particular compared
But that's
to
what I'm
other
saying
areas.
is like if that's where you genetically tend to carry it, which I mean, sorry, women, predominantly you probably fall more into this category. Definitely some men do, but
Yeah, more women would have bigger thighs probably than
but
men.
that would be my guess as to why is because the fat is not collecting around your organs as much. So
Yeah. All right, hit me.
today I learned that Walt Disney accidentally kidnapped Richard Nixon by dispatching his monorail train before the Secret Service could get on. The agents ran after the train and attempted to jump on board, but the doors had already closed. Monorail pilot Bob Gurr was terrified. Nixon got a kick
Oh.
out of it.
Oh, that's hilarious. I bet Nixon was having a blast with that. I bet
He's
he
like,
was. That's a
I'm
good
alone.
one. Freedom!
Let's go, Bob. It's a big circle,
So,
but we can be free for a little bit.
yeah. Just keep going.
We'll get back.
Today I learned that steel shortages in World War One is what led women to abandon the corset and transition into bras as we know them today. So before World War One, most
Were they
women were using
steel?
corsets. Yeah, they had like steel like girder liners.
Ugh. Oh, yeah. Okay, those. Huh.
Crazy.
Weird. That would be so uncomfortable. The things that. Yeah. I'm sorry. Like, has there been a fashion trend where men have to be exceedingly uncomfortable to look, quote unquote, good?
Not compared to the women, man. Women have gone through some horrible shit.
I think the only thing I can think of is like the cummerbund or those wigs. Those wigs would be freakishly
Wigs,
annoying.
but guys, you know why guys that I've
Yeah,
talked to
if they
about
were
why those
losing
were
their
popular
hair and stuff. Yeah.
because of syphilis.
Right, yeah, because they were having
Yeah.
fun other places. Yeah, got it.
Right.
Totally. But I don't think there's
Okay,
been
hit
like
me.
anything too crazy that men have had to endure
For
like
guys.
that. If we go through a girder phase, I'm out. Like
I mean, skinny jeans has been the roughest thing, probably, if anything.
yeah, but that's not like, yeah, it's not like the
I know.
norm. You know what I
Not
mean?
much.
Like if you don't
Right.
wear skinny jeans, you can't go into public. Get your vaccine
Right,
in
right,
skinny
right, right.
jeans. Okay. Today I learned Mel Blanc, the voice of Bugs Bunny, and hundreds more, started smoking at the age of 9, changed his last name from Blank to Blanc, survived a car accident resulting in a 2-week coma, recorded the Flintstones in a full body cast, and died only a year after the recording of Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Whoa.
Like so
Wild.
so much.
That dude's life. My gosh.
He was a voice actor that apparently was in a cast for a lot of it.
That's crazy. Okay,
But
my
9.
last TIL. At 9.
Smoking at 9. Good one, guys.
Marbles. Today I learned that as of 2020, 4.5 billion people are connected and actively use the internet in the world.
It's a lot.
4.5 billion people. That's, I believe, more than half. That's more than
It is
half
more
the
than
world population.
half. But
Yeah.
think about it's about 3 billion that aren't.
True. That's pretty wild too.
Because
Yeah.
actually, a little more than that. Because we're at like what, right around 8?
Are we almost to 8? I think we're almost to 8.
I thought we
If
passed
not at
8.
8. Did we?
Like, yeah. Think about that. Like, there's
That's crazy.
3 billion
That's
that are
bananas.
actively not on the internet.
Not yet.
That's wild. All right, shower thoughts.
Shower thoughts.
Let's do this.
Okay, I only have 3, so you go first.
Okay. People sentenced to house arrest last year really lucked out timing wise.
So good. That's so good. Okay. So, something must have happened to our ancestors for like centuries to make us instinctively clench our butts when something scares us.
I think it's just because we instinctively like that's the first faculty.
But like
we
what
lose.
was going on causing that clench for years?
Yeah. Someone found out and
That's
then
funny.
started teaching their kids.
Let's just say don't go into the water. Don't go into the tall grass.
See that? That's a floater.
That's a floater.
At some point the Walmart greeter stopped greeting people entering the store and became the receipt checker when they leave.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's funny. That's a good point. Let's see here. Soon, I do think it will be normal that old people will be playing video games as our generation ages.
It's already
Like,
fairly
it's going to be
normal.
like, yeah, it is, but it's going to be even more common. Like, you know, most people in their 80s aren't playing video games right now. But, like, potentially, you know, people closer to our age in their
My dad
80s
still
might be playing
plays through the
video games
Halo
more.
games.
Does he?
Oh yeah.
But he's not. Yeah, but he's not 80.
No, but
He's
he's
not 80.
not.
He ain't
I
80.
mean, sorry, Dad, you're not that young anymore. I mean, okay, you're gonna love this. Put on your thinking cap for a second.
Okay.
You
It's
gotta
on.
think. You gotta think in opposites for just a second.
Okay.
Exact
I like it.
opposites. Audiobooks are the opposite of silent movies.
It's perfect. That's perfect. It's so true. Yeah. I would much rather an audiobook, by the way.
But it's
than a
weird
silent movie.
because like movies, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. That's weird how kind of full circle. Okay. This one's kind of funny, I think. So, finding and securing the ovarian secretions of highly evolved dinosaurs sounds way more interesting than Easter egg hunting.
it's true. We should do that.
Basically, that's what Easter egg
I
hunting
know.
is, right?
Yeah, it's plastic ones though.
Finding and securing the
Though it's funny though, is those dinosaur eggs that would have been, the chickens, whatever. We make plastic Easter eggs out of old dinosaurs.
Oh, true. I like that. That's a good point.
All right, it's strange how depicting the creation of a human is considered more taboo than depicting the destruction of one.
Yeah, very true. Very true. But actually, I think that's more of an American thing.
It is.
In European cultures, violence is way more taboo than sex scenes or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. Any more shower
dude,
thoughts?
I have three. I at least have one really good one.
Oh,
this
hit me.
first one
Hit
is
me.
delicious.
Okay, I love it.
There are more numbers than there are things to count.
Yeah. I guess. I guess. I guess.
We could start now and prove it wrong
Yeah,
or
that's
right.
right.
Like,
Yeah. I guess. Yeah.
Superheroes are lucky that every threat to humanity speaks fluent English.
Good.
Here's a good one to go with our conversations tonight. Artificial intelligence doesn't need to attack us Terminator style. It only needs to divide us further, and we will do the dirty work for it, clearly.
Yeah. 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 Great point. Yep. Touche. Good job, Terminator. Good job, Skylink.
Yeah. Airbus.
Punks. Was that it? Is that all we got?
That's all I got.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we really appreciate your comments. We really appreciate everything you guys had geared and guided us on tonight and helped us
Muster.
challenge our thought processes.
Discuss.
Yeah. So
We're
we
still
appreciate you guys
friends.
so much.
We're cool with disagreeing. We're cool if you disagree with us.
And we're still friends with you guys,
Yeah.
Whether
some
you
of
agree or don't
except
agree,
for
we love
that
it.
one person, you know who you are. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking about anybody. So.
Oh man. Well, guys, we appreciate you. We hope you have a fantastic week. We
Yeah.
hope you had a great Easter. Finish off this Easter strong, guys. Go get a couple shots. Enjoy this night.
Go find some dinosaur eggs out back.
Go
I'm
find
sure
some ovarian
everyone-
secretions.
Do you remember the Animaniacs? Do you remember?
Oh yeah.
And there was a little short
yeah.
that came on that was good idea, bad idea.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
one of them was this. We can leave you with this. Good idea. So it used to be a little guy that's like, good idea is
Yeah.
hiding Easter eggs on Easter. Like real eggs, hard-boiled ones like they used to do.
Mhm.
Bad idea. Finding one in July. And he's like,
Oh.
it's all like smelly and rotten in his house.
Oof.
Anyway,
Oof.
don't do that.
Grody.
Also,
Grody,
don't hide
grody.
hard-boiled eggs. That's weird. Hide the
Yeah,
candy-filled ones.
it's not as normal anymore.
No.
They get sneaky.
Hide the petroleum,
All right, guys.
petroleum dinosaur eggs.
Peace out. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Yep. See you guys.
Have a good week.
Until next time.
Bye.